Well, I've put on my Lone Ranger
Oh,
makeup
okay.
today.
Is this going to be a story that will get us in?
Maybe.
Hmm.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't really know where I'm going, but that's good because I've got the right character in mind. Um, so we watched The Lone Ranger because we were looking at that Disneyfied mythology of the West.
Hmm.
What they put in that story was the European expansion into the Western territories, and then what happened with the Indian tribes. And then, of course, out of a lot of these kinds of slapstick events, you get like Lone Ranger and Tonto, who's Johnny Depp, fantastic. But the entire thing is on the madness of mining and the madness of what
Hmm.
that's doing to the men who are involved in pulling ore out of the earth.
Right.
So that's why I've put my makeup on today.
You left off the dead bird. We need it's
Well,
but we
it
need
was really hard to find a crow. Like, I had very short notice. It's very hard to find a preserved dead crow.
it would be appropriate that we
Uh,
need it. We need to find you a pigeon, but I'm not sure we'd want it dead. You'll have to have a live
no,
pigeon.
I want them living, just
Yes.
like languages and cultures. I
Very
don't want
good.
them
Nice.
mummified. Uh, which is, it's interesting. So Tonto's walking around with the dead raven on his head. It's like this stereotyping of culture. Uh, what's going on when everybody's sort of stuck in time and they're not. And of course, he's playing with the pocket watch
Hmm.
throughout the film. So I don't want to give it. I
No,
don't
just
want
give it
to
away.
give away the
Come on,
plot.
it's an old movie. If they haven't seen it, it's their problem.
All right, all right. So he's got this watch, which he's received from uh some European guys that
I think they're
he's
damn
helped as a
Yankees.
child.
Are they Europeans or are they
Yankees?
Yankees? Are they Bostonian?
Well,
I don't
yeah.
remember.
Now I have to make that distinction,
Yes, you
don't I?
do.
Because we know our American nations
Damn
now.
Yankees.
So Yankees roll up, and this little Indian boy feeds them, and then they see some silver ore, and they ask him where he gets it from. It's from memory. Then he takes them to the source of all of this silver, and they lose their minds. So of course they go through the Indian village and they massacre everybody, and he's the only one that's left. He takes them to the mine because they offer him this silver pocket watch.
Right.
So after the massacre, the watch is broken. It doesn't tick anymore. Of course, Tonto's broken as well. So he wears this dead bird on his head, and then for the rest of the film, he's on a vendetta quest to get these damn Yankees that have massacred his village and done it all for silver ore.
Hmm.
But it's a really interesting look at what people are trying to do, in that we're not telling stories anymore, we're mining.
Hmm.
The whole of Western culture has become a mining exercise. It's sort of, and so you see it in this film where people are being imported and trucked in, and you see that whole Western frontier economy, which is prospectors and then people working on the railroads. You see the Chinese that have been brought in to construct the railroads.
Hmm.
The railroads are constructed to shuttle ore and materials back and forth throughout the rest of the Federation. And then you've got the whorehouses, which I love because, well, you see how it's this kind of degradation of women as economic
Hmm.
machines, which is not a new thing. This is part of the American mythology. It's like the hookers in the saloon. So yeah, it's a very very good kind of snapshot of everything. But they're pulling everyone in as this railroad is being constructed, and as everybody's becoming more possessed by the spirit of the silver, which is what Tonto thinks has happened to them all. He thinks that there's an evil spirit stuck in the silver, and it's driving them all crazy. And everyone mocks him for it. But you kind of watch how they're all really losing their mind, and people are getting murdered, and things are exploding, and you start to realize, is it really the case? Is there a kind of spirit in this ore that is turning us all mad? And the only way of seeing it would be to kind of twist the mind from the perspective of the 19th century or the tribal that existed before the 19th century. So it's a really good look at both, like both of those contesting ways of seeing the world. One is mythological, and the other one is empirical. Yeah. So Tonto's gone mad because he wants to undo what was done and roll back time. And he's constantly playing with the broken pocket watch, which seems to me now, after we've had this conversation, that's what many nationalists are trying to do. Work with a broken watch.
Well, they're trying to figure out their kilt pattern, frankly. But that's clan.
Yeah.
And
now, what is clan?
Well, so one, the detail that I would add to what happens in that movie is the Lone Ranger and Tonto do manage to, destroy the silver mine and get revenge and such. But the whatever they use to do it, object word, is a train and that they drive into the mine that explodes. And the thing that I love that the writers put in that I thought was a really interesting little detail is say that the train that has been pulling all the silver out of the mine and for which the men killed the Tonto's village is named the Constitution. So we're back to the law, which enables, and it's like we've had a longer, like there's layers and layers. There's always layers in our conversations, but the layer of you're saying who is who in the story. There's still the pirates and the land people, the pirates living on the maritime, and the people who want to settle and have families and so forth. And those pirates wrote the Constitution. I mean, the United States is. I mean, there's layers in this in the historical. It's founded on like maritime insurance law, among other things. It's like the kinds of agreements the Constitution is intended to protect are in fact commercial, because the people they're not wrong. The people that are involved in writing it, they're plantation owners, they're the New Amsterdamers who are now the New Yorkers, and they're cosmopolitan traders, and they're the shopkeepers in East Anglia. And so whose side is who on and what? I'm glad that you brought up that this mining thing will help people anchor. It's like, what do you do with the land? How do you think about your relationship to the land? Do you live with it with your families? Well, are you there when other people had their families there? The Scots-Irish borders, I still stand by my people. I mean, they moved into the region. They recognized that they had enemies among the natives, and then they married them. I like us. I know. What do you do? Fight? Or do you want, the other one, right?
That made me say it. They both start with the same letter.
and the
alliterating
appropriately. And you're trying to say, I mean, are we human beings? How do we live as human beings? And it is interesting that, okay, so this came up in the chat, and we will show it now on the map is our conclusion. The one author that okay. David Hackett Fisher does this with Albion Seed, that he shows you the layers of culture that even the English had, right? It's just, even if you're just dealing with the English, you've got 4 regional variants that are very powerfully different, and then 5 if you count the plantations in the South. You add in the Dutch with New Amsterdam, you add in New Orleans with the French and the long French occupation in Louisiana. You add in the Spanish and El Norte, which is, a subset of Mexican culture, which is itself regional and different. You add in the Western settlement and so forth. And then you add in all of those Germans and Irish and Poles, and what do you end up with? But American gods. And Neil Gaiman did it beautifully, right? I think that story is so insightful. It is at some layer what we modestly are trying to achieve with our own poetry exercises of realizing the mythology that's layered into everything. And what I love about Gaiman, what I'm showing right now is the map of the journey that they take in the book, which is, up north Wisconsin around to Nebraska and Kansas. They end up back down in Tennessee. It's kind of in parts of the country that I know moderately well from, driving a lot when I'm growing up. But there's always more to find, because what Gaiman did do, I think, brilliantly is go around to the tourist attractions in the United States and say, these are centers of energy, right? They're weird. They're it's like, why do you build, North Dakota outside of the Black Hills? I think they don't go that far. Like, not only do you have the Black Hills, which was a mining town, mining towns in the Black Hills, you have the caves, the beautiful caves, you have Mount Rushmore, massive federal exercise of domination of the landscape. You have also the prairie dog town with the giant prairie dog. And you drive through southern South Dakota and you get Walled Rug, which I think Mel has been to recently. She's going to comment. You have the Corn Palace, which was, it was an event venue decorated with corn cobs and mosaics made out of corn. You have little local car museums, right? If you do the proper road trip in the United States, you stop at all of these kinds of attractions. And what Gaiman does in American Gods is, those are the psychic occult centers with the merry-go-round and the little village in Tennessee of the elf, the gnome garden and stuff like that. And then does that also with the place names, including things like, you have the Egyptian characters, running their embalming funeral parlor in Cairo, which is very appropriate, right? That every single people that came to America brought with them their gods, brought with them what is a nation without its gods? It's a nation, God. So we started with Christian nation. We recognize that the spiritual element of who we are really, really matters. And we're living in this landscape that is the most confusingly named, England is actually very confusingly named too, because the place name layers are quite deep there, from British and Celtic and Roman and Anglo-Saxon and Danish and Norman, and we can do a whole nother episode on English history. And Gaiman is recognizing that it's like America is all of these mythologies layered on top of each other, in tension with each other, and all acting at the same time, right? That they're all still somehow alive. Dinosaurs, Mel says. You are speaking to my exact road trip this summer to visit my parents. Yeah, it's if the land people, if we travel on the land, then you find yourself in these stories. If you want to find American nation, go travel it. Road trip. Yeah, live there, put roots down there, be in your landscape. It's relatively simple, and yet the temptation of the cosmopolitan, the temptation of the sea, the temptation of the vending machine is incredibly strong.
The sea gods call.
The sea gods call, and we're pirates too.
Oh, I hear them calling. It's very, very difficult to ignore once you're on the sea, to go back to land.
Yeah.